that South Africa's economic trajectory remains unsustainable. The country's high levels of unemployment, coupled with low economic growth and rising inequality, mean that our beloved Rainbow Nation urgently needs to implement reforms to achieve the 1994 dream of a better life for all, or risk losing further momentum. It is clear from this challenge that we need an all-hands-on-deck approach, and there is no better place to start that than with the mining industry. Our industry continues to contribute significantly to the national fiscus, as well as to the very sustainability of many communities. The industry also plays an essential role in many regional economies across the country. I would argue that we are one of the few industries that truly shares the value we create with our stakeholders, our employees, governments and host communities, suppliers, and of course our shareholders. This, however, is not enough to help alleviate South Africa's enormous economic challenges. We need to think differently about mining if it is going to fulfil its true potential of being a cornerstone in transforming a significant economy to benefit South Africa's society in its broadest sense. We can only achieve this if we create a new paradigm, and it's a much overused word, but one where mining moves from merely sharing value to helping create enduring value for all. And that means creating value as our stakeholders see value, not as we perceive they should see value. Two concepts that might sound similar, but there is a material difference between sharing value and enduring value. The difference lies in how we ensure that the value we create stands the test of time, and it's not just in the short term. In mining, many of you will be familiar with the term life of mine. 5, 10, 20, in some cases even 100 years. But life of community starts at 100 years, we hope. And for those communities that we engage with, 100 years is certainly how they would be thinking in terms of generations to follow them. And the key question is, how can a mine today help create a very different life of community? Creating enduring value is about each of us participating in the process, being heard and being connected with in terms of making a difference. So for us, what does enduring value look like? I think it has several features, some of which include sustainable and healthy returns for shareholders. In our case, and we've heard this a few times in the last few years at the Indaba, investment follows returns. It's not the other way around. And so we have to demonstrate that people can invest in South Africa. Their money will be safe, it will grow, and for many of the people in this room and beyond, it actually is the cornerstone to their pensions in terms of their long-term future as well. And we're critical to every South African's future just in that context alone. It has to make a consistent contribution to the national fiscus. Mining communities must in fact be much broader. They must be self-sufficient in their own right, because by the very nature of mining, resources do have an end life. And we need to help create a more skilled workforce that is enabled to adapt to the unfolding change in the nature of work. South Africa's mining industry has 3 immediate tasks if it is to create enduring value. First, we need to urgently focus on creating an enabling environment for investment in the sector. Second, we need to embrace modern mining with all of the opportunities it brings, and with open eyes and understanding the unintended consequences, because we have to manage both sides of that equation. And third, consistent with the second point, we need to navigate a transition that is sensitive to our current financial and social complexities, That is, we need to find compromises and solutions to both sides of the debate. In terms of South Africa, we need investment to create enduring value. We have effectively, for much of the past decade, been a cash-starved industry, one where investment levels have been declining, while the input of costs, and in particular energy, water, have soared, and where regulatory uncertainty has understandably caused reluctance amongst international investors to support new major mining projects. Despite this, Anglo American has continued investing in South Africa, particularly if you look at the last 25 years of democracy. In the last 20 years, since Anglo American merged its South African business with its businesses around the world, we've invested more than 300 billion rand in capital expenditure in today's money in South Africa. Prominent among these being the development of the Venetia diamond mine, the Mogalakwena PGM complex, Chris talked about that today, and Kumba's ongoing expansion of Sishen and Kolomela. We will continue to evaluate investment opportunities and act decisively when prospects materialise that are competitive on a global basis. And yes, we have sold some assets. In the context of our global business, there are assets that are small and would likely be run better by people who look differently, operate differently, and are willing and prepared to put additional capital in to extend the life of those mines and work closely with those local communities. I saw a question up earlier about Anglo Platinum selling bad assets. There are no bad assets. There are assets that each of us bring different skills to developing and help make perform. But at some point, there's an end of life of an asset. And making judgments, as we would at Anglo American, may be different to someone else. So instead of closing an asset, making a decision to sell an asset to someone we believe can make a go of that asset is a much better long-term view for South Africa than it is for us to close operations or not develop operations because we have to make choices with the capital we have available. And that distinction is absolutely critical. And unfortunately, in the last few years, Anglo American has had to make some really tough decisions in where it allocated capital and how it ran its businesses. And for us, if we hadn't made the decisions we'd made, there would certainly be no Anglo American here today. And so when talking about assets we've sold, I wouldn't describe them or have someone say that we let them lie fallow. We actually sold them so that someone else could invest and develop them for the benefit of South Africa. And to be quite frank, that's turned out to be a good strategy for Anglo American and a good strategy for South Africa. And it's still a work in progress. I was pleased last year to see a number of mining companies answer to President Ramaphosa's call to invest in South Africa. The upcoming Presidential Investment Conference, which takes place next month, provides an opportunity for us as an industry to once again demonstrate our substantial contribution to South Africa's economy and the country's future growth. This raises an essential question for those of us who are deeply invested in the success of the South African mining industry. How do we gear ourselves for a different trajectory? There are many reasons to believe South Africa's mining industry, irrespective of the challenge we face, has a great future. Consider the following. South Africa remains one of the top-ranked countries globally in terms of mineral endowment. There is no shortage of geological opportunity. And as we often say, the world is long resources, but it's short reserves. We've got the resources. The question is, what can we do with people, communities, governments to turn those resources into reserves? That means we have to be the best of the best. And if that's what it means, then we need to go forward understanding that and engage in the tough conversations that need to be had to create the best mining industry in the world. The Minerals Council of South Africa is now of the view that even in the absence of greenfields exploration boom in South Africa, mining investment could almost double in the next 4 years if the country was to return to the top quartile of the most attractive mining investment destinations. That's certainly a point Bernard's been scratching at in terms of how we're ranked as a country, and it won't come unless we change those metrics. No point talking about doing good things. We have to do good things, and it has to be recognised, because investment won't follow unless they see it in those numbers and they see it happening on the ground. Doubling investment would create additional jobs, materially increase exports, and direct and indirect taxes and royalties paid to the fiscus. But in reality, it'll only happen if the critical foundations are right. And let me talk to a few. First, our political climate must be stable and investor-friendly. Of course, like everyone else that's spoken this morning, we're absolutely thrilled with the progress that's been made politically in terms of the directions that are being set for the country. But there are still a number of challenges where it's pretty clear that not everybody's standing in line and supporting the President and his team, and every one of us has to do everything we can to make sure that we have everyone facing north. I think the government is on the right course. It's trying to attack the right things, but they need our support, and it needs to be aggressive support. Second, we need regulatory clarity and certainty for the long term. We now have a revised mining charter, and again, as Chris said, we're absolutely thrilled in the progress that's been made. No, we're not happy with all aspects, and we hope that our engagement remains positive and constructive with the Minister, and I'm sure together we can chart the future, because the reality is that if it's not right, doesn't matter what we say, doesn't matter what we do in the charter, the investment won't come. And we'll have to confront that reality, and I think with that reality, it will help us continue to evolve the conversation in terms of where it should go. Third, as an industry, we need to promote ourselves. Investors must believe that we have the confidence in our industry, economy, and institutions if they're going to invest. It's not my intention to criticise unfairly. As the Minister said to me, he doesn't mind a good debate on policy, but let's not get personal. And certainly in terms of Anglo-American, we've tried to hold that value in everything we say publicly, but it doesn't stop us from being robust in the debate. We need an aligned voice bringing Labor, government, NGOs and mining companies to promote the South African mining industry. We need to speak with one voice. I'm not for a second suggesting that we abandon our respective positions and causes. I'm merely making the point that we're all vested in the success of the industry, and we need to start acting that way. A unified vision for the country is something that we all are aligned behind, and making sure that that expresses it through mining policy and our strategy as a country is absolutely critical. If South Africa follows through in terms of policy and the domestic investment climate, we believe you'll see a new industry and certainly a key platform to help South Africa navigate the future as we'd all like to see it. With 453,000 people directly employed in the mining industry, resulting in a further 1.4 million indirect jobs and supporting around 4.5 million South Africans, the multiplier effect of a growing mining industry can never be underestimated. It is also a technology leader and provides a platform for transformation for other sectors of the economy. And again, it's not in the numbers, but when you've got a growing mining industry, it goes well beyond the numbers that we would normally report. Modern mining is an opportunity for South Africa to regain its competitive edge and put itself at the vanguard of the mining industry across the globe. But even with these critical foundations in place and with the necessary mining rights secured to attract investments, success will be challenging without a fundamental remodelling of South Africa's mining sector, so that it embraces new technology, new skills, and in doing so is globally competitive. Glenn, I go back to some of the questions, and the key point was we've got pockets of excellence, and we have got pockets of excellence, pockets of industry-leading technologies and people. And the question is, how do we build off that platform that's being established to help the whole industry move forward together? The reality today is that the future of mining will need to be very different if it's to be genuinely sustainable as a business prospect in any country. South Africa has a prominent and leading role to play in the change of our industry across the globe.